Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Princeton Public Library. I'm Janie Herman, the manager of adult programming here, and it is my great pleasure to welcome everyone tonight, both here in person in the community room and also to our live stream audience out on YouTube. Before we begin this event, there's just a few quick housekeeping notes. That this room is equipped with a hearing loop that pairs with T-coil technology, so if you need hearing assistance, you can turn on your T-coil switch, or you can ask us for headphones or just grab a pair from the piano to the right. Also, we kindly ask you to silence your electronic devices and hold your questions, as there will be a chance for audience question and answer at the end of the discussion. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce Emily Mann and Alexis Greene, our guests who are here to discuss Emily's latest work, an adaptation of The Pianist that will debut at the George Street Playhouse on September 26th. Alexis Greene has a background in public relations, was managing editor for the Women in Theatre magazine, and is the author or editor of more than 10 books about the performing arts, with a special focus on women in the performing arts. And her most recent biography being Emily Mann, Rebel Artist of the American Theatre. So as you can tell, she must be the perfect discussant for tonight. In addition to writing and editing books and magazines about women in theatre, her career spans acting, theater criticism, and teaching. She holds a PhD from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, and she currently divides her time between the city and upstate New York. Emily Mann, well, someone that really needs next to no introduction in the town of Princeton, having led McCarter Theatre here in town for 3 decades as their beloved artistic director. Emily is, in a nutshell, an exceptional playwright, director, artistic leader, and advocate for women in the American theater. As McCarter Theatre Center's artistic director and resident playwright from 1990 to 2020, she oversaw more than 160 productions, including more than 40 world premieres. During her tenure, the theater won the Tony Award for Outstanding Regional Theater, and Mann herself was twice nominated for Tony Awards as a playwright and as a director. She was inducted into the American Theater Hall of Fame, and as we will soon learn, she is staying very busy in her post-McCarter years. Welcome, Alexis and Emily. We're so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, Janie. And I do want to thank Janie and the Princeton Public Library for inviting us here tonight. It's great to be here and to be with all of you. And of course, to be talking with Emily Mann about her new play, The Pianist. As Janie said, Emily has had a tremendous theatrical career, 3 decades at the McCarter Theatre Center. And her outstanding plays, Theater of Testimony, include Execution of Justice, Greensboro, A Requiem, Having Our Say, The Delaney Sisters' First 100 Years, and Gloria, A Life. And though she has retired from the McCarter, she continues to write and direct. And recently she wrote a book for a new musical called On Cedar Street, which was produced by the Berkshire Theatre Group in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, about 2 weeks ago.
It feels like that, but a month ago.
A month ago, thank you. The Pianist, as Janie said, will have its world premiere at the George Street Playhouse in New Brunswick. And the first performance is September 26th, and you are directing it. Your play was inspired by Wladyslaw Szpilman's memoir, which was first published in Warsaw in 1946. And its title at that time was Death of a City, Memoirs of Wladyslaw Szpilman, 1939 to 1945. And then it was published in English in 1999 as The Pianist, the extraordinary story of one man's survival in Warsaw, 1939 to 1945. Tell us about this man. Who was he, and what led him to write this memoir?
Well, Wladyslaw Szpilman, some of you may have seen the movie by Polanski that was so brilliant, based on the memoir. He was, in 1939, a rising star of the classical theater world in Warsaw. He was a great classical pianist. And the last piece that he was playing when the bombs fell, he was playing on Polish radio. He was a constant player of the piano at Warsaw Radio. He was playing the Nocturne in C sharp minor by Chopin. And that was the last time he would be able to play, because when the ghetto walls came down 14 months later and Jews were targeted for ghettoization and then extermination by the Nazis, he did not play again until after 2.5 years in hiding in Warsaw, with only a few hundred Jews left alive in Warsaw, he ran into as he says, the first and only human being in a Nazi uniform he ever met. A man named Hosenfeld, who saw him hiding out in the villa where the Wehrmacht was going to be staying, saw him. There was a piano. There just happened to be a piano in that villa. He asked him what he did for a living. He said he was a pianist. He said, okay, play me something. And he played the Nocturne. And the Nazi officer was not only so moved as to help him, hide him, and give him food, but saved many other Jews. Fascinating story of one man's survival. And the man himself, Wladyslaw Szpilman, credited his survival to the love of his family and their memory. They were all killed in Treblinka. And his music kept him alive. So it really is an extraordinary story of survival and the power of art.
Thank you. When did you first read this memoir, and what inspired you to write your play?
It's so interesting. You know, these things don't come out of nowhere. I mean, I wasn't just inspired to write The Pianist. I was called by an old friend named Michael Wolk, who I went to graduate school with in Minneapolis, Minnesota, at the University of Minnesota, where I was a Bush Fellow there and at the Guthrie Theater. And I had written my first play, Anula, an autobiography, which is about a woman who was a survivor of the war, and it was also about my mother's family that had all been killed by the Nazis in occupied Poland. And he remembered the play, and it had blown him away when, you know, we were in our 20s and, you know, a long, long time ago. And then seemingly out of nowhere, I was teaching at Stony Brook in Southampton at a writers' conference. And I remember picking up the phone and he said, "Hi, is this Michael Wolf? Remember me?" And I said, "Michael Wolf from Minnesota?" He said, "Yeah, the very same." And he said, "You may not know, I've been following your career, but you may not know I'm a Broadway producer." And I went, "Oh, yeah, oh, that's the same person as you. Oh, I hadn't put that together." And he said, "I have the rights to the memoir of The Pianist. And I remember your play when we were both graduate students. And my colleagues and I, my co-producers, think you're the perfect person to write the stage adaptation." And I remember saying to my husband, "Oh, I'm not going to do it. I can't do another Holocaust play. I just can't do it." And as he said to me, "Look, you're going to do it." Whenever you say you're not going to do one of these things, whenever you're resisting it, this struggling, I know you're going to do it. So, in fact, I read the memoir then for the first time, and it blew my mind. It was, I mean, I greatly admire the film, but the beauty of the memoir struck me as, well, there is a play here that would not be like the film. It would be a theatrical event. And I said yes.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, absolutely. Are there events or experiences in your background or your family's background that connect you to Szpilman's experience of the Nazi attacks on the ghetto?
I might get a little emotional tonight because I'm in the middle of rehearsal and it's fantastic and it's shattering all at the same time to be working on. So, Alexis knows me very well, so she's getting to the heart of it right away. I learned very early about my mother's family. I was a little girl, and my mother's family were all murdered in their small town near Warsaw, called Ostrołęka, and they had been living side by side with their Polish neighbors for centuries. With a pogrom here and there and a problem here and there and, whatever, but still together, semi-harmoniously. And then when the Nazis invaded the town, forced the Poles to kill my family and the entire Jewish community. And I won't give you all of the details, they were horrific. But it was as many Poles as Nazis who killed them. And then in Warsaw, my grandfather's family on my mother's side were all Warsaw Jews, and except for my grandfather and one cousin who got out, we don't know. They all either died in the ghetto, typhoid or starvation or whatever, or in Treblinka or Auschwitz, we're not sure. So I've known about it all my life. I've been traumatized by the family story and the Holocaust. All my life I've tried to understand it. And I've done a great deal of study and writing about it. And when the producers, when Michael Wolk said to me, "Well, will you do it?" I said, I have to go to Poland. And I have to go to Warsaw, and I have to feel it for real from the Szpilman point of view. And so we got me there, and I met his widow and son, and they took me around. Gary was there with me and Michael to all the places that were where Szpilman had hidden during the war, also to that horrible place, Umschlagplatz, which was the transit center, a name that was from my childhood, struck terror in my heart. We went there. Anyway, I also went to the Jewish cemetery, to the graveyard, and that was what was interesting is the Nazis had basically leveled Warsaw as much as they could and had destroyed the ancient cemetery on the other side of the river in Praga, but they ran out of time, and so they didn't destroy the Jewish cemetery that was just outside of the ghetto. And I was taken there by a guide who had done his research and found my family's gravestones. So there I went and put a stone on my great-grandmother's grave, and it was incredibly moving and life-changing, and I knew, I have to honor them. I have to honor the family. And of course, it only went up to a certain generation because then there were no graves. So it went all the way back, decades and decades, and a couple centuries of the family's graves. So did I answer the question?
You definitely answered the question. Thank you. When you went to Poland and you met Szpilman's widow and his son, Andrzej, I believe his name is. Did they talk about their husband and father?
Oh, a lot. And that was what was so wonderful. He's very covered in the memoir he reveals only a small amount of himself in it, oddly. He gives you almost as if he's still in shock the way he writes. It's a very cool kind of narrative in the memoir. He wants to get it down. He wants to not forget or make sure he tells the truth, and it's still quite fresh, but it's not emotional. It's sort of like guarded and direct. But when I met Helena is her name, the widow, and Andreas, he calls himself, or Andrzej, they told another story about his warmth and his humor and how loving he was. So I really got a sense of the man, and they both adored him. So it was a really, I got a sense of him as a living, breathing human being rather than just, a chronicler of this horror.
And then I'm curious, what was their reaction to you when they heard that you are writing a play?
Oh, they approved me. They read all my plays. So, okay, yeah, they were open, yes, and it was lovely.
Could you talk about your process a little bit? How you were obviously emotionally very stirred by the hero, if you will, of this this story and the environment. But what is your process? How do you begin to write a play like this? How did you begin?
When I was still weighing whether I wanted to do it, and I was at the writers' workshop at Stony Brook in Southampton, Roger Rosenblatt, whom I think I know Joyce knows, but it's like, he gives a wonderful writers' workshop. And he said, come in anytime you want to. So I just happened to sit down one day, and he says, well, I start all of my classes with a 15 to 20 minute free writing. And I expect anyone who's in this room is going to have to do it. He looked right at me and went, oh, okay. And he said, okay, here's the prompt. And a prompt meaning this is what gets you to start writing. He said, I'm trying to remember who the pianist was, a very famous pianist anyway, was coming to stay at his house in Southampton. And he had a piano, and it was badly out of tune. And he thought, I can't invite him to stay at my house with this badly out of tune piano. So he called the piano tuner, and the piano tuner sent over his daughter, who said, he really can't come today. He said, write about something called the piano tuner's daughter. And all of a sudden, I started, and that's the first scene of the play. She's completely made up. Her name is Magda. She was and I wrote the first scene of The Pianist. And you have to come to see what it is. And that scene has not changed. And then she went all the way through the play, and I thought, if I can invent, because there's not a lot of the family in the memoir or in the film, I suddenly realized, oh my God, for me, it has to be a family play. That's who's lost. So I invented the family from the few clues he gave me. 2 sisters, a brother. His brother was a poet. One sister helped his mother teach piano. The other sister was a lawyer, and the father was a violinist. It was a family of musicians and intellectuals, and they were very secular, assimilated Jews in Warsaw at that time. I thought, oh, I know these people. I absolutely know these people. So I invented them. That's how it started. Magda came to visit. He had he was going to be playing on Polish radio that night, and the play began, and then I couldn't stop writing.
Well, that leads beautifully into one of my questions, which was, when you work with a text such as Szpilman's memoir? And is your dialogue in the play drawn from that text, or can you invent? Is it a mixture?
It's a mixture. I mean, some of it comes from the memoir, but as I say, there isn't a lot in the memoir of the family. So it was a lot of invention. And then I realized also something. One of the things that makes the film so unforgettable is Polanski, of course, had lived through this himself on so many levels. Whatever you think of Polanski as an artist in this film, wow. I mean, it's just flawless work. And he was able to show the ghetto. He was able to show all the details of what really happened and the horrible violence, which you can do in film. I don't think theater is a very good medium for that. Theater is about language and the use of the imagination and words that spark images for you. I mean, Shakespeare would always, you know, he painted his scenery with words. He often, there are a few very violent moments in Shakespeare plays, but mainly it's about you imagining it. And so he also uses direct address, I mean, soliloquies, right? Yet again, I'm going to take down the fourth wall, which I often do in my plays, if you know them. I mean, having our say is a direct conversation of the Delaney sisters with the audience, as so many of my plays are. And I thought, Szpilman should speak to us as he is in the memoir and make that language of his theatrical and emotionally connective to an audience, so that he takes us in to let us know what his story is on a very simple level, and to never show the violence. You watch him experiencing it and telling us about it, but you don't see a little boy's brains blown out by, you know, a German police officer. You don't see it. He might tell you, you might hear a memory of a shot, but you don't see it. And that was my way in to make it a vivid theatrical event that would move you in a new way and not numb you to the harm, because it's so personal.
It's interesting that you say that. Last Friday, I had the pleasure of sitting in on a rehearsal of The Pianist in a rehearsal room in New Brunswick. And there are background sounds that you will hear when you're sitting in the audience, background sounds of gunfire, of the bombings that take place. And the contrast between the horrific sounds of gunfire and bombing and the music, the piano music, that the actor who has played Szpilman plays so magnificently. And I was stirred by the contrast of these sounds.
Yeah,
and
that's the big point. Yeah.
Well, yes, the sounds of war versus the sound of music, the sounds of art, really. But I did find those sounds of war frightening.
Good.
Okay.
You're meant to.
When I was interviewing you for my biography, you recalled that in 2017, I said to myself, does anyone want to hear about the Holocaust again? And then I looked up and it was Charlottesville on television. And I saw the neo-Nazi flags, you said. And at that moment, I thought, yeah, I should be doing this. And a little more than a year later, your decision, in my opinion, was reinforced when a man entered the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh and killed 11 people and wounded numerous others. you describe this as a play about a family, but is it also a political play?
Oh, yeah. It certainly is. I mean, it is, I think one of the reasons we're all so shattered in rehearsal, but also believe that what we're doing is important to do, is that the more you study the rise of fascism, say just in Poland, never mind in Germany, we're seeing it everywhere, and we're seeing it here now. And once it happens, things change very quickly. And that's one of the things that happens in the play, that you see. At first it's like, well, do we leave? Do we resist? By the time you fuddling around thinking about all of that, the ghetto walls go up, you know, and then you can't get out, and then you can't get papers, and then the worst happens. Well, that's as extreme an example as one can think of, and yet it starts with the banning of books, and it continues with taking away certain rights, and suddenly voting rights are a little bit iffy, and you know, all the things that we are beginning to see all over Europe and in this country is happening again, if you will. And the point is, you must resist. We must resist before it's too late. And I think it's in some ways a cautionary tale, but it also has great resonance for this moment in time, in a way that every day an actor will come into rehearsal with a new article from the paper or a new piece of information or something that was on the web. Just a few weeks ago in Highland Park, which is a Jewish neighborhood right outside of New Brunswick, there were swastikas all over the temple there, that were put there overnight only a few weeks ago. When we look at the young man who was murdered in Florida, the guy, his gun had swastikas all over. I mean, you know, this is, you have to have your head in the sand not to see that, you know, the right wing is being given permission and is beginning to gain more and more ground. The polls are looking at it straight in the face as well right now. Or, you know, when you see things like Elon Musk talking about George Soros being the source of all evil, which is a dog whistle for anti-Semitism. So you see it when there's racism and anti-Semitism, which they often go hand in hand, are the same thing, rising. And the far right talking about the other. We're back in it.
Yes, and it also seems to me to be an anti-war play.
Oh, yeah.
In that Szpilman and his music and his creativity and his extraordinary piano playing do manage barely to survive.
Yes, yes. And one of the things that is interesting too is it becomes incredibly poignant to see that there are flashes of humanity even with those people who have been ordered to kill just because someone, you know, just because someone is a Jew, or just because some, you know, whatever the other is that has been designated to be exterminated. In this play, it's Jews. That, you know, for example, when Hosenfeld listens to the music, it's the full nocturne, and the leading man, Daniel Donskoy, is playing it live. He's a brilliant pianist, along with being a superb actor. He is just phenomenal. He's a star in the making. I mean, I have never worked with a young actor like this, and I've worked with amazing people in my life. I mean, he's astonishing. And you watch the guy, Rob Grant is his name, who is playing Hosenfeld, and he hears the trills on the nocturne in C sharp minor, and you see him go, oh my God, this is who we've been killing. We've been killing these brilliant people, or at least some of them are, and he realizes how wrong it all is. And it's this sort of stunning moment. And when we found it in rehearsal finally, and you can see it in his eyes, because you're having the same thought. Is he going to take out his gun, as we've seen every other Nazi in the play do, and shoot his brains out, saying, thank you very much, boom. And he doesn't. And you see him realize that what he'd been told was a lie and wrong. And will God ever forgive him? And he saves him. It's quite extraordinary. Gives you hope for humanity. Oddly.
Yes, he actually says he's ashamed of being a German.
Yes.
You're known for writing, among many things, what is sometimes referred to as theater of testimony. Plays such as Execution of Justice, about Dan White's assassination of the mayor of San Francisco and the assassination of Harvey Milk. Greensboro, a requiem about an attack by members of the Ku Klux Klan at an anti-Klan rally. And Gloria, a Life, about feminist and Ms. Magazine founder Gloria Steinem. Is the Pianist theater of testimony?
Yes and no. I mean, he is testifying. He is telling us his story quite directly, but it also has a lot of invention in it, as in Magda and the family. According to Andrzej and Halina, the widow, they say, when Andrzej saw it, he said, oh my God, this is the family my father talked about, which was very sweet and made me very happy. But but it's not just, theater testimony purely is using the words of other people to make a theatrical event, but purely using their words. And I've done many of those. This was a sort of combination of invention, still trying to be true to the person testifying, but also using his words to reach you. And I suppose it means that it's rooted in fact as much as memory can be. I mean, we know memory is faulty. And memoir comes from memory. And so I say that it is the truth as he remembered it and knows it. And some of it, because it's traumatic memory, I believe it because I see that so many other things that I've read, correspond to, but I wouldn't be surprised if he got something slightly wrong. This is way as human beings, how we remember. As you know, I kept telling you my story, and then you would come up and say, no, you're wrong. That's not how it was.
You are directing the world premiere of your own play.
Yes.
Do you like directing your own plays?
I'm just looking at my husband now because he knows the answer. I do like directing at least the premieres of my plays so that it's up there the way I wrote it and envisioned it and heard it. Often writers are helpless in the room and when I say the room, the rehearsal room or in the theater itself, because a director can sometimes muzzle a playwright. As a director, I hope I never have. Joyce might disagree, but I maybe because I am a writer, I want to give the writer what they wrote. It's not about me, it's about birthing their new work and what they see and hear. And if we disagree, we talk about it. So often I have been in a situation where that is not true, that talking doesn't happen. So I'm always happy when I'm in control. And I also don't have to go off and ask the writer permission to change a line. Something's not working. I just change it right away, right there with the actor, and it works. So to me, it's just all one thing. I'm creating this theater piece. Whether I'm writing or directing, sometimes I can't tell the difference.
Thank you.
Oh, it's late, isn't it? Oh, no, it's not. Oh, we didn't start at 7. We started at 7:30. I'm so sorry. I feel like I've been talking a lot.
No, it's wonderful. Let's keep talking. Changing the subject somewhat, as I'm sure many of us sitting here tonight know, and you and I know, the pandemic has hurt theaters across the country. Audiences have stayed away out of self-protection to some extent, and theaters have suffered financially. For 30 years, you led a theater in Princeton. Why do we need theater? What does live theater give us that is so valuable?
No.
Oh, an easy question, I know.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, I was also in the pandemic and didn't go to theater for 2.5 years, and it is amazing to be back in it because there is nothing like it. To watch people create a story in front of your eyes live for you, directly connecting with you in the audience, and knowing that it will be different every night depending on the audience and their response, that there is a conversation that goes on in direct storytelling and in theater. And that you're breathing together with a community of people and together responding to a work. You know, live performance is an astounding gift. Also, theater at its best, I mean, there's all kinds of theater, but theater as an art form, and even theater that's just plain old entertainment has its own craft and artistry to it. I'm not judging it or ranking it, but the kind of theater that I love to go to and I love to make, you don't get in other ways. You may get some very good writing and storytelling on television. I mean, and the more and more, when we were all cooped up for 2 years, so many of us saw fantastically good things on television. I mean, I know I did. And same with film. And yet it's a flat screen. It's going to happen whether you're there or not. It's a very different experience than watching in a collective and experiencing with an audience. Actors creating it for you at the exact moment in time. And there's just nothing like live theater in that way. And it can tell stories that are not necessarily mass media stories that have to reach millions. It can be stories that can reach hundreds. It can be stories that reach thousands. It doesn't have the same pressure on it financially, so it can be more daring in some ways. And I love that.
To an extent, you talked about this at the beginning, but I'm going to re-ask based on what you just said. What is the story that you would like audiences who see this play to leave with? What would you like them to be thinking about or feeling as they watch your play?
I would like each individual person to go on their own journey with it. I mean, if you have family that have been lost. And you know, it's interesting, when I was doing this discussion the other night with the George Street crowd, right here in Princeton, a gentleman came up to me from Pakistan, and he said, as you were talking to me, I was thinking of my family. So he's going to watch this play in a very different way than other people might in this room. Everyone comes with their own family histories and with their own knowledge and with their own level of empathy. No one has a monopoly on suffering. And we're a country that comes from refugees, except for the native people that were here before the Europeans came, or the Black people that were brought here in chains. Everyone else mostly came because they were fleeing something else. And certainly the founding people on the Mayflower, they were doing it too. So I mean, if one looks carefully, one can see how it would feel to be the other and to be running for your life. So I would hope some people might think about what's going on right now at this moment in time. Some people might be thinking about the current refugees. Some people might be thinking about Ukraine. Some people might be thinking about what happened to their own families as Jews. I mean, everyone will come to this in a different way, but I think questions of humanity and the lack of humanity, how evil grows in the heart of human beings and is allowed to flourish, what human beings are capable of doing to each other, and this is true over millennia. Whatever you want to grapple with, it's in there for you to chew on and to experience. But I'm hoping that more than anything, you say, that could be me. These are not people other than I am, different from me. This could be me. I could be next. I mean, you look at they live like they're Jews on the Upper West Side, right? They're completely assimilated people in Poland at that time. There was this one little pocket of time when they felt safe and okay.
It's rather fascinating that 77 years after he wrote this memoir, after Szpilman wrote this memoir, it is still a significant. It is a brilliant narrative. Yes.
And also the power of art and music.
Should we open it up to audience questions?
Well, I had one more question.
You have one more question and then audience questions. Okay, perfect.
Is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to say?
No, it's just in this time when theaters are so in peril, please go. Go to the theater, tell your friends to go to the theater. There's a great theater down the street here that needs you to come to it. McCarter Theatre, my baby. And we need you in New Brunswick. So I hope if this at all interests you, you will not only come, but you will bring everyone you know to come with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Yeah. Microphone, quick.
By the way, I already bought tickets.
Bless you. Thank you.
My parents were from Poland. My father came over, and Jewish, came over before the war. My mother came over after. They did not want me to understand Polish, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm curious as to how Szpilman and his family decided to stay in Poland as opposed to leave.
Well, you know, it's very interesting. This is what happened to so many people. What that sound is. So many of them thought, you know, they'd gone through wars, they'd gone through pogroms. This will pass too. There was that feeling.
I mean, after. No, not that they left. Why? I'm not asking why didn't they leave
In 39.
war.
No,
I'm asking about
45.
how did they decide to?
Oh, why did Szpilman stay?
Yeah.
It's very interesting. There were very few Jews left. And he had great Polish friends. He loved Warsaw. He loved Poland. He loved Warsaw and Polish radio. He was saved, besides the one with Nazi, he was saved by his Polish friends. So he went back to Polish radio. When he finally survived, they found him under a piano at Polish radio. And they took him in. He knew no one, almost all his friends had been killed, his family. But he was taken in by them, and they brought him back to life, really, and got him playing again. And he built a life there. Then he fell in love with a woman who's not Jewish. Halina is the widow that I met, who's just recently died. And her father had been a very liberal mayor of a small town outside of Warsaw, and had saved Jews, and was a very good man and a very progressive man, and he was taken into that family. So it was home. Yeah.
So someone on our live stream audience emailed me a question to ask. They want to know what else you're working on right now, other than the Pianist, because it sounded like you might have several irons in the fire.
Thank you, Jenny. Yes, I do. Just after, well, you heard about the musical that just premiered in the Berkshires this summer, and that we're looking for next steps on. So I'm hoping that we will have another production of that. And I go into rehearsal literally a month after we open at George Street. I'm in rehearsal with a production of Night of the Iguana with Tim Daly. I don't know if any of you know who Tim Daly is. Ty Daly's brother, but in his own right. If any of you watched Madam Secretary and him and Daly on. So Tim is playing Shannon, and my dear buddy Daphne Rubin Vega, who many of you have seen here. She was on my production of Anna in the Tropics here and on Broadway. She won the Tony nomination for that, and then Streetcar that I directed on Broadway. That was Daphne, and Rent, and she's fantastic. She's playing Maxine. And Austin Pendleton, who's playing the father in The Pianist, is playing the grandfather in Night of the Iguana. Anyway, that's going to be on 42nd Street in the Signature Theater off Broadway, which is a beautiful house. And so I go into rehearsal for that on Halloween. So I hope you'll come to that. It opens December 17th. So those are my three big ones. They're all because of the pandemic, everything got squished together. So it's one boom, 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 a marathon of 3 in a row. Oh, yes. Oh, I'm also working with a dear friend, Mark Frost. Does anyone know of the series Twin Peaks? Yeah. All right. Well, Mark's co-creator of Twin Peaks with David Lynch, and a dear old friend of mine from the Guthrie. And he's coming back to the theater after many years of film and television and writing of novels and nonfiction. And he's writing a book, a play on FDR's final years, and asked me to direct it and work with him on it. So we're in development for that, which I hope will come to fruition the next year. You are a busy lady. I am. That's what makes me happy.
Yes. Any other questions from the audience? Oh, okay, hang on.
I also have tickets for the Pianist. And
Thank you.
people.
Fantastic.
I wondered, you've written and also directed many plays dealing with the African American experience.
Yes.
And some white individuals would shy away from that, feeling that they cannot adequately address those issues, and you have not. And I wondered if you could speak to that.
Oh, thank you for asking that question. Did you all hear it?
Oh, sorry.
This lady asked me, that many white writers have shied away from writing about African-American experience, and I have not, and why is that? Which reminds me, another project, it looks like Having Our Say may be revived on Broadway next fall with Whoopi Goldberg and Felicia Rashad, which would be really nice. One of the reasons I have not shied away from writing about African-American people is that I grew up with African-American people. My father's best friend was a man named John Hope Franklin, who was the dean of, he really founded the field of African-American studies in those days called Negro Studies, first Southern history, then Negro Studies, then Black, right. He wrote From Slavery to Freedom. I mean, he's an icon in the Black community, and I'm very, very close. We were very, very close. And our family and his family, and my father's field was the immigrant experience in America. And between the two American historians in my life, to me, America's glory is the multiplicity of cultures and ethnicities in our country. And so, mother's milk, I just grew up with it. And I always had worked with. So I was always drawn to Black stories, Jewish stories, American. I mean, it was never an intellectual decision. It's that when those stories came to me and I responded to them, and I would direct them or I would produce them if they were Black. And the same thing happened with, I guess, because it's. In so many ways, I looked at things through the lens of the Holocaust and Jewish experience or Black American experience, that I was drawn through those are the plays that I often responded to. So it wasn't because it was programmatic. I mean, I did this before it was the thing you were supposed to do, and I just always done. And I always only produce, write, or direct plays that I adore and that I think are important. And so many of them were by women and people of color.
I have a follow-up question to that. In the theater today, because the theater
Yes.
has.
I know where you're going. Yes.
Yes. So you have an all-white cast in The Pianist, but I mean, how do you, as a director, approach this diversifying?
I always think you have to be true to the work. You could put people of color into Nazi uniforms. I don't know if anyone would appreciate it and why. You could do that also with the Polish Jewish family. I thought not. I thought artistically that wasn't the right choice. Now I have to tell you, I thought about it. I said, okay, am I going to get it? And I thought, you know what? Now that the swastikas are raised again, have you noticed how often we are now hearing Black people and Jews were sort of kept out of the oppressed in this country for a very, very long time. And, since, I was born after World War II, right? You didn't have anti-Semitism here, you weren't allowed to talk about anything else. And so suddenly Jews were the elite, or they were white people, or But then when it comes down to it, then now all of a sudden, I'm allowed to have a Jewish cast, even by people who are who are rather hardliners about diversity. Also, because I have 35 to 40 years behind me of being a leader in opening up the field to underrepresented people, and especially African American and African people, that I get a pass. Now, it's not that I have a lot of very passionate feelings about this, and I think the theater has been appallingly sexist and racist, that women were kept out for a very, very long time, that Black people and people of color were kept out of the theater for a very, very long time, and I worked most of my conscious life in the theater to combat that. At the same time, I think the pendulum has swung too far in one direction, and that we are forgetting about the art. And I am now laser focused on that. For example, Daphne Rubin Vega is, she's got Peruvian Black heritage, right? Her mother is Black, Panamanian. And when we were asked recently on an interview, last time you worked with Daphne Rubin Vega you did a cast of color for the streetcar. Is that what you're doing for Night of the Iguana? I said, actually, no. He said, well, what's your concept? I said, I'm picking the best actors I know for each role. And Daphne is a great idea for Maxine. And she burst into tears and she said, thank you. She was an artist again. She wasn't an artist of color. She wasn't a Latina. She was Daphne Rubin Vega herself, who is perfect for that role. And that's what I come back to. That makes sense?
Makes great sense. I think we're just about at time. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, we gotta let Dan have the last question,
So,
Dan.
in order to really see the artistry of Emily, George Street this season is doing not one play, but 2 plays. And you didn't mention the second play, so please.
Thanks, Jan. Always the publicist. I love it. Will you be my agent, please? Yeah, they are really honoring me in a way that is so moving. Not only are they doing The Pianist, but they're doing also a production of Having Our Say right afterwards. Very moved by that. Thanks.
Who is directing it?
Layana Mitchell, who is a person I've just met while working at George Street. She's an associate artistic director there now. And she's just so bright, so incredibly committed, and really understands the play. And she's great. And she's a big backer of The Pianist too. So. Yes.
Okay, so. It definitely sounds like, in addition to going to McCarter, which, by the way, I saw Bull Rusher Saturday night. You really have to go see it. I'm going to say that. But take a trip up to New Brunswick several times this season, it sounds like, to see something at George Street Playhouse. Of course, visit our McCarter, and even go into Trenton sometimes to the Passage Theatre Company. I like what they do there as well. And I love that you were saying, let's keep supporting the theater, keep supporting the arts. So important. Emily, it was a joy to have you back. Alexis, thank you. It was so lovely to meet you. Thank you for coming down from New York to do this interview. And I think we'll conclude our evening here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan.